On this episode of Another Zelda podcast, David meets with Alex Sheehan to build a top 10 game changers list. Hello and welcome to Another Zelda podcast. I am David, your co-host for tonight's episode, and I am actually without my regular co-host, Kate Fisher. Tonight I am joined by a guest, Alex Sheehan. Alex, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I just wanted to get right in there and introduce you right off the bat. I am well. Thanks for asking.
That is the most efficient intro of the night. Of the two.
Of the two. We did start one first. Yes. That was a little rocky.
And I'm sorry. That's so rude of me.
What's
I'm
that?
here my first day. I'm nervous. I didn't ask you how you were doing. Dave.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Are you taking over the show here?
What?
Yeah, I think you are. It's all good. But Alex,
it's co-host for a reason, Dave.
I'll take it. I enjoy it and I welcome it. Tonight, Alex, we are going to be talking about we're going to build a top 10 list of game changers in the Legend of Zelda series. But before we dive into that, I have some listener feedback, but I also kind of want to explain to some people who may not be on our Discord who the heck you are.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready.
I'm gonna. Okay.
I guess I did say me.
Sorry. Well, I got the criticism. I took the note well that I shouldn't hijack the show. I didn't want to just jump in there. Okay, what do you want to know?
No. Let's start it this way.
Okay.
A lot of people might know you as Ocarina of Rhyme on our Discord. We have you as one of our managers and moderators on the show. Now, you and I have known each other for a long, long time.
It's been a while.
We've talked about Breath of the Wild for years. It's actually years now.
Yeah, I think I received a pre-order for my birthday 3 years before it came out. After all the delays, it finally came out. Exercised that pre-order at a GameStop. Got me some Breath of the Wild.
Absolutely. So it's been a pleasure to have you on our Discord chatting up with folks. But I thought maybe we'd do an episode where we actually got your voice on the show. Yeah,
it's a little weird. I feel a little out of my element. I don't have to type anything. I don't have a lot of time to respond to anything you're saying.
Like right in the moment, huh?
Yeah. If there was like an audio version of an ellipses while I'm typing and thinking, if we could play that, if it takes me too long to respond to anything or too long to come up with something funny.
Would it just be like someone just being like,
maybe just play the chest opening music?
Yeah, that's what it is. Every single time.
Over and over.
I had a moment a few years ago where I was very excited and I found the chest opening sound as a ringtone on iOS.
Could you imagine if that was around in the Nokia days? That would have been a bestseller.
So I went ahead and bought this. I don't normally buy ringtones because they're frankly so expensive considering.
Who needs it?
But I did go ahead and get this chest opening sound and I attached it to my phone ring and I attached it to my alarms. I attached it to everything and it lasted about a week. I was like, stop.
Yeah, that is the best way to hate something is making it your alarm. I thought it'd be cool. There's a Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror, that starts real nice and slow and like a great way to just amp up your morning. You wake up, you stretch, you yawn,
I can see that.
And then when that backbeat kicks in, you're like getting out of bed and you're doing great. But after the first week of that, you are done with Michael Jackson whole cloth.
I love it. I'm just imagining like
I still can't watch Free Willy because of the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's too much. Alex, let me get to some listener feedback here, and then we're going to jump into our top 10s.
I don't think anyone learned anything about me in that other than I no longer listen to Mac.
I guess I got excited. Sure. I want to jump to the next thing. No, you've
podcasted.
What do you want to know? No, Alex.
I like to torpedo podcasts. That's number one. What else? I guess that's the only relevant thing here. I've been on Technophiles, another sister podcast.
It's true.
Of
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners on Zelda here may not be totally aware of Technophiles because Zelda was picking up when Technophiles was going down. But almost 8 or 9 years ago, you and I started that podcast together.
Yeah, it's true.
Back when we were both living in good old Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Kate Fisher, my co-host, lives now.
Well, what's she doing now? What tonight?
Tonight she had a conflict. I invited her to come out here with me for the three of us to chat with you.
Should we do the top 10 conflicts episode? I think that'd be good.
So actually, I should also tell the audience that I'm out in Madison right now. And normally we record this in Milwaukee's every once in a while. When I had our mutual friend Lizzie Alstead on for our top 10 shrines episode, we actually recorded that down in Chicago. Tonight we're in Madison. So you've done some podcasts.
Yep.
You do some things. You are kind of freshly or newly here in Madison.
Yeah, I've never lived in Madison before. I've lived in Wisconsin Like you said, we lived in Milwaukee. I grew up in Kenosha.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just moved back a couple months ago from the state of New York, the city of New York. And that's how you say it, right? That's the most common way of describing New York City.
That's what I've heard it say.
State of New York, city of New York.
Yeah.
And we've been
It's
here
on
about
the
2 months.
t-shirts that way, I think.
Yeah, I heart state of New York, city of New York.
Yes, indeed.
And all the shopping bags. It's everywhere. So I'm finding some delightful things in Madison. The farmer's market.
Oh, nice.
Firing on all cylinders. However, it's going to get cold soon.
Oh, so
I don't know what's going to happen to that. I hope they keep it open.
Indoor farmers market somewhere.
I don't know. I hope they lean into it. And you
Yeah.
go with cross-country skis and buy bespoke snowballs from farmers. I don't know.
I get it. The farmers market in Logan Square in Chicago is pretty great. And in the winter, though, it does go to an indoor place, but it goes into an indoor space that houses pinball machines. So it's wonderful.
Sure.
You just walk up and down the aisles, you buy some spicy jalapeno jam, and then you go play Jurassic Park pinball.
There you go.
It's a good Sunday afternoon, I will say.
Well, that's how you get the paddle buttons all sticky. I don't see that panning out. But I believe you.
It's a fair observation. I don't have the jam while I'm walking around. I'm just saying.
Top 10 jams next time?
Top 10 jams.
Okay.
That's maybe there's like a Breath of the Wild cooking spinoff there. But anyway, let me get to our listener feedback.
Can I just complain for 2 seconds
cooking?
about cooking?
In Breath of the Wild?
There's 2 cutscenes whenever you cook anything.
Yes.
Come
you can skip them, and I do.
You can skip them, but that's wearing out my Joy-Con buttons. That's 2 clicks per cooking that at the end of the life of my Joy-Cons, I'm not going to be able to play Celeste anymore.
I concur. Let me talk about, we've got some listener feedback here on Instagram. The Calamity Skull Kid actually spoke to, let's see if this is it or not. Yeah, our last episode was the Spirit episode. We did kind of a loosely Halloween themed episode.
Now, Dave, you understand Halloween is tomorrow.
No,
it's Wednesday.
Don't say those things on a show like this.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, our listeners are super smart and they know that we record some of these ahead of time, but you're ruining the magic.
I'm talking Halloween 2016. So no one really knows.
So we've actually traveled forward or back.
Gave you a little wink there.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We're going to move forward. The Calamity Skull Kid on Instagram
Can I get a timestamp on that Instagram post? I'm sorry. That's the last time I will try to torpedo this episode.
That
is not true.
The Calamity Skull Kid on Instagram. I'm going to talk as fast as I can so Alex doesn't talk. I'm just joking. He says, great podcast. I disagree with something, though. In Majora's Mask, the last temple seems very spirity. I'm going to interject for a second. I did mention on our Spirit episode that I was trying to find a spirit temple or a spirit temple like in Majora's Mask, and I was a little hard pressed. There are 1 or 2 that I think get close, and Calamity Skull Kid speaks to that here, if I may.
If it's all a dream, isn't the whole game a spirit temple? In some way?
Well, hey, I have another comment about that. I'm going to get to that in a second.
Oh, jeez.
So Calamity Skull Kid says, great podcast. I disagree with something, though. In Majora's Mask, the last temple seems very spirity. As you play a song to materialize the spirits you've healed in the masks into statues to hold down pressure plates and stuff, along with the entire Ikana Valley being filled with the spirits and undead. And I actually kind of agree with Calamity Skull Kid here. I seriously considered adding that 4th or final dungeon. But, we did come up with one thing, Alex. I know you haven't heard the Spirit episode yet. Kate and I had a hard time actually figuring out what's a Spirit dungeon, what's a Shadow dungeon, and what is it, just a graveyard situation?
Yeah. I wonder if there's also some cultural things in Japan that they might consider a Spirit dungeon and a Dream dungeon and whatever.
Similar things
or different.
Yeah. I'd say here in the West, when we talk about spirits, it's definitely trending towards like an afterlife experience.
Yeah.
And that may not be the case in other cultures. That's an excellent observation. So Calamity Skull Kid, a great honorable mention there. I really did consider that one, but I think ultimately I didn't include it because I feel I'm really nitpicking here, but I feel like it might be more in place with next season's Halloween episode where we talk about crypts and graveyards and things like that. That'll be a year from now, but we'll happily talk about it then. Over on, over on that same post on Instagram, Space South B, SPAICESOUTHB said, "Oh, I listened to this during my work day on Friday, and I would like to add an afterthought. It might not really fit all the criteria, and I'm not sure if it is really a dungeon or a temple, but what about in Twilight Princess when you meet Midna. It sort of has the spirit guards roaming around and almost a forgotten feel to it. I don't know, but I love your podcast and can't believe after season 1 is over, I have to wait until January to listen to you guys again. Alex, any thoughts about when you meet Midna in Twilight Princess?
Well, I want to direct you to the backlog of Technophiles, so you'll have plenty to keep you busy there until January or whatever. But I do have some thoughts on Midna, and I don't. It doesn't sound like they're talking about the actual dungeon. It sounds like they're talking about
the sewers
that dream,
area.
The sewers area, but isn't that where you first go into that dream sequence with like the fake spirit Zelda in the fake spirit realm?
It's possible, yeah.
That I think could definitely be considered sort of a spirit temple-ish.
It's spirity, indeed.
I think that that part is very clearly doesn't blur the lines between like spirit technology and real world that Twilight Princess does throughout the whole game.
We spoke about that.
If anything, it does kind of like stay locked into the one. It's either that real dungeon or the spirit realm. And we don't really get like the blocky pixel cell shaded things until later in the game. So that I'd buy it.
I agree completely that it's spirity. If we're going to also nitpick and consider it a actual dungeon or temple, I think it doesn't quite fit, but I absolutely love the thought there, Space South B. I think it was a great thing to point out.
Yep.
Alex, here's a weird one. This one is intense. Nerman over on YouTube, he sent us quite a large comment.
On YouTube this is?
Yeah.
People comment on that platform?
Indeed.
Interesting.
Tell me more of comments on YouTube.
That's odd.
And we've been very, very lucky so far. People aren't trolling us. People are actually commenting legitimately.
Well, that was until you had me on.
Who's this guy?
No one at me.
Okay, so Nerman here, he first of all talks about listening to the show while he works. It helps him pass the time with his headphones. But I'm going to jump to the next little part of his comment here. Now, this gets pretty intense, Alex. And how do you feel about Majora's Mask in general?
Oh, I hate it.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's the worst.
I have a love-hate relationship with it. I actually kind of love the artistry in it from Enuma. It was Enuma's first complete game that he had full control over.
Okay.
And there's a lot of expression in it. There's a lot of expression in the ending, the kid under the tree who has lost. You know, there's a lot. I feel that it's much more artistic than Ocarina, but I do feel Ocarina is a stronger game ultimately.
I think that it's borderline not even a Zelda game.
I agree.
There's for the first, I guess like 25, 30, maybe even hour of gameplay, there's so many NPCs in that town. And they effectively took a game that had sort of whispers of open world RPG in that it's kind of nonlinear. Yes, there's linear in terms of like the temples you do, but this concept that you're encouraged to explore and find things and take your time. Yeah. They time boxed a game like that, which I would agree. Just seems like it could have been a great game and the same level of artistry and evocativeness without that mechanic.
I would say that like in games like, well, let's just keep it in Zelda, Breath of the Wild, but I think there are other examples, perhaps Witcher, perhaps Red Dead. We'll kind of get these living lives that are happening with NPCs, but a lot of that's done with AI now, and maybe there's like some scripting, but I feel that in Majora's Mask, the AI wasn't quite there, so they literally just scripted everyone for 3 days worth of time and then let you kind of quote unquote open world it within those 3 days over and over, because I feel like back then they still had to script everything. That's one thought anyway.
Yeah, it could be. Well, they did that in Ocarina as well, and probably every Zelda game they've scripted the NPCs. It just seemed like it took a leap from, and really like expansion should always be encouraged, but it seemed like they were introducing 20, 30 NPCs at the beginning of this game.
It's overwhelming at first
when you don't know like
what's going on
or who these people are, and they didn't do that in any Zelda game up to then.
I agree completely. I remember being very excited about when I realized, oh, this NPC is not just spinning in a circle with the woman he loves. When I realized, oh, this NPC is walking to a place and that matters, I got very, very excited about that. I was less excited about how I had to do the same 3 days over and over and over.
Right.
But I remember just having this idea that because sometimes it's smoke and mirrors. You go into a game, even in Breath of the Wild, there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors where you're like, oh, this town is a living town, but really that's just a kid running in a loop on a track that you don't see. And that other guy, okay, when it turns to night, he goes to the front door. And when it turns to daytime, he goes and hangs out by a tree. It evokes these characters having lives, which I think is phenomenal. But in Majora's Mask, for me, I was kind of thinking, I remember when that hit me 3-4 hours into the game where I was like, no, these people do have lives. But of course, they've been scripted. So anyway, okay, so that's how you feel about Majora's Mask. Again, playing it, I think there are other Zelda games that I like more, but I was kind of moved by that whole, and the NPCs actually matter in Majora's Mask. So to that point, Nerman here says this gets a little intense. Something I love about Zelda, besides the games, is all of the fan theories created due to all of the mystery with the series, especially Majora's Mask.
Then you got to get on our Discord, buddy.
Well, indeed, Nerman, you're welcome to find our Discord, which you can find links to it on our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com. We also have links to our Discord in our show notes on YouTube and on iTunes and Google Play. So anyway, Majora's Mask, I would love it if you guys could do a podcast or maybe your favorite theories or something, or some of your own that you might have. And then he goes on to say some of his favorites are, here we go, we're diving in deep. Some of his favorites are that Link is dead in Majora's Mask. The Shadow Temple from Ocarina was a torture chamber used by the Hylian Kingdom to torture the Sheikah. And that the Ocarina of Time Link helped set up the Howl Stones and gave his tunic to the Lake Spirit, all to basically prepare so that his eventual successor, the Twilight Link, would have what's necessary to defeat Ganon. Sorry for the long comment. LOL, keep up the great work. I mean, there's some good ideas in there.
Yeah, I maintain that, and we're going to get a little off topic here, Dave, so strap in.
It's okay. We're still doing listener feedback.
We're in the era of the golden age of television, as it's called. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the phrase. I generally... in terms of entertainment mediums, television, film, I'm all right. It's fine. I don't get too into it. I'm not entirely out of it, but it's not like, whatever. So with shows like...
Well said.
Thank you. With shows like, what's the one? Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Your fantasies, your sci-fis.
Okay.
I assert that it's more fun to follow along with the message boards, with the fan theories, than actual watching of the show. With something as grand as Game of Thrones, where someone like George R.R. Martin went through all the trouble of like having the high houses and the lower houses and this huge world with all these alliances and wars. It's almost more fun to think of what's going to happen and why than to actually watch what is going to happen and why.
Yeah.
I think the same can be said for video games, especially ones that have such a long history like the Legend of Zelda series. Metroid, Mega Man to some extent.
Yeah.
That's all just kind of, I don't know.
We spoke, Kate and I, in one of our Patreon episodes, we spoke about the difference between Zelda and Metroid, in that Metroid is a single character and absolutely a single timeline, where Breath of the Wild or Zelda gets a little bit wibbly wobbly.
Could be.
However.
No, that's the point.
Is
that like the fan theories and the lore and the canon is, well, I guess nothing in Zelda has ever been confirmed by the creators, as far as I know.
A little bit. There's a little bit here and there.
The cartoons, there's some books, I think, that say some things, but there's no admission that like
there are
Majora's Mask is a dream, or that Link died, or like whatever.
That's true. That's true. You're right. The closest we get is there are some interviews out there where Enuma says, yes, XYZ game is after Ocarina.
Sure.
XYZ game is before Twilight Princess.
But that's perfect. And I think we talked in the Discord about how that could really be additive more than anything to a game like this that's been going on for so long, where there's this concept in Destiny of Grimoire, where as you're playing the actual game, you are collecting bits of lore that help unravel bits of story as to why these things are happening, who the characters are, past what you get in the normal course of the gameplay.
Okay.
And I think that with something as dense and lush as Zelda over the course of 25 years?
Well, we're coming up almost
longer.
on 30 years. 25 was Skyward Sword.
Yeah, there you go. So 30 years of...
I think it is 30 actually now.
Of story that ostensibly doesn't contradict itself anywhere in any of the games.
What?
Right? I mean, like, you could write a narrative that could fit all of the games.
Maybe, yeah. What happens
There
is
may be some
sometimes
disappointing
games,
bits.
sometimes games will reference other games, and sometimes there are some contradictions there. And Nintendo does; they are absolutely not shy about saying that they do gameplay first, then like the story.
Sure.
Like the game ideas come first. That's more important than making sure it fits somewhere in the timeline. But I do feel that they're caring about the timeline more these days. But anyway, you were still
Well, you
saying.
got to be, right? Like they're going to be potentially jockeying Breath of the Wild for the next 2 or 3 years. with
Breath of the
DLC.
Wild has a official timeline placement. Have you heard?
I did not.
Oh, we spoke about this about a month ago on one of our Patreon episodes. The official placement for Breath of the Wild from Enuma himself, from Nintendo himself, is that it is at the end of all 3 timelines collectively.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no matter where you put it in the timeline, they're going to be making Breath of the Wild DLC for the next several years, right?
Well, Enuma actually said that they're done with Breath of the Wild DLC. They're already working on the sequel using the same engine. So it's going to be a little bit of a Majora's Mask or like a Twilight Princess situation. Same engine, new game.
I have a question for you, Dave.
Yes.
Why'd you have me on this show?
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Anyway,
I would love more DLC for Breath of the Wild. Anyway.
point is, you can be playing these games now for years at a time.
Yes.
And like before, it would be 5 years between Zeldas, right? Like,
The big ones.
yeah, right?
Yep.
Glad I got one right. So why not bake a bunch of extra story into these games and stretch them out longer and longer?
Yeah, I agree. Breath of the Wild alone, everybody can play that game for 150 hours easy.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yeah,
I'm around
absolutely.
150 and I've been playing for 2 years or something like that. And I play casually. I jump in a little bit maybe once a week kind of thing, you know,
Sure.
play for a couple hours. I don't play super aggressively. I did when I was kind of doing some of the main things. But anyway, I'm enjoying this. I feel like we got to get to our topics,
we could.
our top 10.
Oh, this is a top 10 episode. Oh, let's do top 10 time wasters.
No, it's not a time waster. So yeah, so all these theories, I think you're speaking to like building in some of this lore around the edges and looking at some of the details. There are times where games will specifically reference a previous game. And I think if anyone builds lore or theories around that, that's always very exciting. It's true that sometimes Nintendo will pick a few of those up and it'll become canon, and sometimes that stuff just fades. The idea, how do you feel about this idea of specifically? Let's reel it in with me asking you: do you think that Link might be dead in Majora's Mask?
Yes.
Yeah, I considered that too because he goes to another.
Yeah.
It's not Link's Awakening where
Goes
he
to a
falls
realm.
asleep for
Yeah, no,
a
no,
full
no.
game.
Yeah.
He like kind of he goes to Termania and also there's a lot of time and space travel at the end of Majora's Mask where you're dealing with death and there's metaphors of death and there's metaphors of loneliness and stuff like that. I think that's totally plausible. That would contradict the Hyrule Historia timeline where there are games that come after Majora's Mask, but I digress.
Well, wouldn't that even kind of, where is Link to the Past?
Link to the
timeline?
Past is
Is
in
that
the
before or
timeline
after?
where Link does not defeat Ganon in Ocarina.
Well, there's one level in Link to the Past where you find the remains of, I think, a past Link, right? know
It's
where on the
possible,
map
but
it
A
is.
Link to the Past was considered a prequel when it came out compared to the 2 Nintendo games.
Yep.
Now it's like number 8 in the list because you've got Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, Ocarina,
Yep.
Four Swords for Game Boy Advance. All of those are before a Link's Awakening on the
Yeah.
current timeline.
So that would lend support to the theory that Link has died at least in one of these, if not Majora's Mask,
Certainly.
if you're finding the remains of Link in future games.
Well, then things like Wind Waker, where they talk about Wind Waker directly addresses that it is a new carbon-based life form that becomes Link. You know,
that is
takes
cell
the name
shaded
Link.
and
Yeah, but
is
it's
a
not
little
the
baby.
same actor. I almost said not the same. Character.
Yes.
From Ocarina, for example.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love theories and lore. It's always fun. I really enjoy like passive lore. But Alex, let's do this. I think this is fantastic. I'm really enjoying talking about all these things. I feel like we could probably record 2 or 3 different podcasts, quite frankly.
We could. Let's pick a top 10 of anything. Write in, like and subscribe, suggest what top 10s you want us to do.
Oh, did you see on Discord all the great ideas that people had for our top 10s?
Oh, yeah.
Believe me, many of our Discord members, I wrote every single one of those down. We're going to do top 10 game changers for this. It was actually, Alex, it was your idea, and I thought it was a great one because Kate and I have been doing a lot of lore lately, and I would like to return back to the mechanics a little bit,
Yeah.
which I assume we will be doing in this episode.
And I didn't have time to play through the 1,000 hours of Zelda to prepare for anything but a top 10.
Let's do it this way. How about I go first, so you get to say the last thing at the end of the episode. What your most favorite thing.
No one's gonna like it, but okay.
I did this with Lizzie as well. When we did our shrines. So I'm going to start with, and we're going to count up. As in other words, I'm going to start with 5. I've picked 5 things. You've picked 5 things. We absolutely 100% do not know what each other picked.
We have not. I have hidden my laptop when Dave was setting up earlier.
Yeah. You actually closed the screen so I wouldn't see.
Yep. They may be the same. If they're the same 5, I think we shut down the show. I think we end it.
I think we might have some repeats, but we'll talk about it. Now, let's try this too. This could be fun, Alex. Mm-hmm. What if my number 5, for example, is your number 3?
Ooh.
Don't tell me till we get to your 3. Let's keep these secrets until we hit it.
Here we go. And I know it's an audio medium, but I'm going to show you my poker face right now. Let's pretend. For the sake of argument, you just said the scenario you just described. Your 5 is my number 3. Here's how I'm going to react.
Fascinating.
Look at that.
He's just sitting there, ladies and gentlemen. He's just sitting there and nodding. All right, Alex, my 5, my first or my 5th is one that I'm actually not very happy with, but I think it was a game changer to some degree.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who did things that I didn't like about the game changer.
Yeah, I have a few in here. My first one, or my 5th, I guess, favorite game changer, it's a little weird to word it that way, is something that I thought was very important, even though I personally didn't care for it, and it was the motion controls, specifically in Skyward Sword. I found myself, when I was thinking about game changers and building this top 10, I was thinking about some narrative things. I was thinking about storytelling, all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, I started zeroing in on mechanics, however. And I remember playing Twilight Princess on the GameCube, later playing it on the Wii, not loving the motion controls, even though in general, I'm kind of pro motion control. No. In general, I'm pro get off the couch, you lazy bum.
Sure.
Like in general, conceptually, I'm in favor of like, yo, cool, yeah, let's wiggle and waggle and whatever.
You're saying you'd rather control The Legend of Zelda using the dance mat from Nintendo for the
power pad, or the
pad.
Sega Genesis activator. That was a good one.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I'm pro don't be lazy, but ultimately I feel like a lot of these motion controls kind of fail. I have to say. I remember not loving the fact that waving the sword in Twilight Princess was really just pushing A on the GameCube controller, but the way that you quote unquote push A is you wave the Wiimote around.
Yes.
And if the XY axis peaks enough, A button is pushed essentially in the code is what happens. You know what I mean?
So one thing I don't hate about that is the A button in Skyward Sword, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, it did do multiple things. When your sword was out, it was to attack. If not, it was to interact with
And I just said
landscape.
A button on GameCube. It really was the B button.
Sorry. The green one, whatever the big one.
The big green one is usually the context-sensitive button.
Yes.
And the sword is usually the red one.
Yes.
In Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Pardon me. I'm a little hoarse right now. So I was so excited when Skyward Sword was like, we're actually going to do one-to-one swords.
Not only that, they're like, and you have to buy this better Wiimote to do it.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, maybe it'll be better than Wii Bowling or Wii Golf or whatever the Wii Sports titles were. But the first opportunity you get to really use it in Skyward Sword is against this really tall, skinny, slender man looking guy, but also is like, it looks like a court jester, and he has a nice thin foil, and he throws playing cards at you, and you have to like dodge and parry, or like parry and then poke him or something.
Yeah.
And it just would never register, and I had to switch to the actual button to get
switch to it
to beat that boss.
Oh.
Yeah. Right? Because you can.
I don't think so. I think you have to play motion controls.
Maybe I'm conflating Twilight Princess. I know that the enemy is from Skyward Sword.
Yeah, certainly.
I remember that battle taking forever.
Well, I agree.
I must be conflating then.
When you must do horizontal, when you must do an angle, when you must do an up and down. So yeah, when I first started playing Skyward Sword, I was running around and my sword really did move one-to-one. Like I would hold the controller out in front of me, the Wiimote, and Link would do all the things. Yeah. And I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted, until I had to fight something.
Right. Yeah. I think the problem is that your instinct when you're actually fighting something is to go very fast and quick. And And it just didn't keep up with that. If you're just like playing
Yes.
around, seeing how it maps to your actual wrist movement, then it's fine.
I agree completely.
But if you've
Yeah.
got like fine-tuned,
Slow movements, it's like this is the most magical experience ever. But when you start waving faster than the actual weight
Yeah.
of the sword in the game,
Yeah.
it all breaks down.
it sure does.
So, but anyway, I still feel it's a game changer because at least they did it. They went for it. They tried it. And I will say, here's a positive. The Wii Motion Plus technology did affect Zelda in a positive way.
Sure.
It was first shown. It was first. This is exemplified in the Ocarina of Time 3D for Majora's or for Nintendo 3DS, where they kind of ad hoc'd in some code where you could use the motion sensors of the 3DS with your arrows and your slingshots to aim.
Yeah.
Which definitely traveled into Breath of the Wild on
absolutely.
Switch and Wii U. So that's technically just the same thing. Do you might remember in Skyward Sword, you always have to reset your. You have to
that's
push
right.
that digital
Yep.
down button
Yeah,
to
yeah,
reset
yeah.
your motions.
Yes.
Well, the way they do it in Breath of the Wild is every time you go to arrows, they reset it for you.
Yes.
So that makes sense inside the game instead of having to push this button all the time. And so I actually think that they learned a lesson from what they did with Skyward Sword. And I think that the motion controls, technically the Wii U Motion Plus controls, disguised just as motion controls in a Switch, totally work.
I think a blog came out today, in fact, that this wasn't just for the Wii U and that there was a prototype for the GameCube of a Wiimote.
Oh, yeah, Wind Waker.
Yeah.
The Wind Waker baton was originally going to be a motion control controller. And they kind of hung, it was going to be a peripheral, and they hung on to that technology and then ended up being putting that in the Wii.
Man, it's amazing how great the GameCube is. They even avoided disappointing periphery.
I think the motion controls in the Wii U controller and the Switch controllers are the right way to do it. But anyway. Okay, so that was my 5. Motion controls, I feel it was a game changer. It affected Breath of the Wild in a positive way. At the time, like I've said this in 3 episodes already, Alex, but I desperately want an HD remake of Skyward Sword on the Switch where I don't have to do the crazy waggles. Maybe all those controls are put to the right stick or something like that. Maybe there's a little bit of motion control.
Right.
Maybe, because Skyward Sword, I also said this last week, like sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's a blurry mess. It depends on however that renderer works.
Sure.
When it does work, it's gorgeous. I would love to see that in HD, but let's keep moving. Alex, what is your 5th most favorite game changer in the Zelda series, or what you think is most important?
Well, we're not going to rehash the entire conversation, but my number 5 is using motion controls.
Whoa!
Now,
That's why you had so much to say. I'm so happy.
yeah, so my number 5, though, doesn't have so much to do with hating on the motion controls for battle mechanics. It's talking about finally using motion controls for non-battle mechanics.
Tell me about it.
Speaking specifically in the shrines, where you have to use the gyroscope to do the puzzles in some of the shrines of Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, okay.
So,
So you're talking about motion controls just in general, not specifically Skyward Sword.
not specifically Skyward Sword, but specifically Breath of the Wild, where you're using them not to battle something, but you're using them to complete a puzzle.
Okay, well, wait. I think we can technically make this 2 different things.
I think we can.
Mine was motion controls in Skyward Sword, and yours is motion controls in Breath of the Wild, where it was refined and perhaps used correctly.
Well,
Okay, let's talk about it.
correctly with an asterisk.
The gyroscopes. Yeah, no, that is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so it's a smaller ask from the game designers to make us do these puzzles with a gyroscope because it doesn't necessarily take. It's more forgiving, right? If you turn the switch incorrectly, nothing bad happens. Link doesn't lose hearts.
That's true.
You just have to then turn it again, but it's still pretty terrible. It's I spent several nights playing this in a chair or in bed or on a couch lying down, and I would have to like stand up and push the switch up and flip it around and like go on a headstand and do all this stuff just to do the simplest of puzzles.
If you're playing in handheld mode on the Switch, I think that those gyroscope puzzles literally break.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because of the way that you're playing it.
Yeah,
but you're holding a controller.
I think they found a marginally more comfortable way to torture us, still torturing us with motion controls.
Now in Breath. Oh yeah, sorry. What were you gonna say?
I'll still say
going, keep going.
Like it did find a perfect home in aiming with arrows or like hook shot in the remake of Ocarina of Time, and that holds true through Breath of the Wild. I think there's some riding and shooting part of the game that I think would be impossible without the motion controls.
So I have Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. I don't have a Switch yet. And just as a side note, when I would get to those gyroscope things, I often played on the Wii U controller, but I was like, well, here we go. Push it out to the TV. And I'm just holding this big Wii U controller while I look at the TV, and I wouldn't be able to play it on the thing. And certainly it's the same for Switch. But I will say I have a third-party I guess you could say Wii U Pro controller, some third party, whatever, Logitech, whatever, and it doesn't have the motion controls in it. So it was a cheapie. I just got it so that I wouldn't wear out my Wii U.
Right. Because once that's gone.
Gamepad, analog sticks.
Yeah, those are going to cost $1,000 in the future.
After 100 hours of Breath of the Wild and playing other games, they were getting a little soft. And I was like, I want to hang on to, I don't want to wear this out. So if I'm just playing if I'm playing Mario Kart or something, I use this Logitech controller. But
that's going to be your Mario Maker machine, is that?
Yes, yes, indeed. Which perfect. I still play a lot of Mario Maker. I love it. Good. But so I'm finding, though, for convenience, I'm starting to play Breath of the Wild with that controller as well, which means I don't have any of the motion controls on the controller, which means that when I do switch to arrows, it's almost like I'm back on the Nintendo 64. I'm aiming only with the analog stick. Yep. Sometimes it works all right, but there are times if I'm in a bigger battle or something, I have to switch to the gamepad because I feel that just that instinctive, subtle twisting of the remote on the Switch Pro or any of the Pro remotes or the Wii U or anything, you almost don't even think about it. It's intuitive, and I think they did do it right.
I think it's maybe I'm wrong, but I think it feels like it is more forgiving too. That an inch of joystick is far greater than an inch of motion.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the joystick is like your large controls, and then the fine tuning happens in the motion controls.
Yeah, I like it.
Cool.
Great.
All right, so my number
we're 1 for 1.
I like it. I think that's technically still two things. I'm going to be building the list here. And that was, so our first was motion controls in Skyward Sword, then motion controls in Breath of the Wild.
There we go.
I'll take it. Number 4, I know you and I both have experience with this game. My number 4 was, feels a little uninspired to bring it up because it's controls again, but touch controls in Phantom Hourglass.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I have a fun story about Phantom Hourglass. But
sure.
Go ahead.
I know for a fact both you and I played Phantom Hourglass quite a bit. I think maybe we both even beat it just because we talked about it casually 8 years ago or 9 years ago or whatever it was when it came out. I remember being very skeptical of the touch controls when I saw the first trailer for Phantom Hourglass and by extension also Spirit Tracks and all of that. But ultimately when I got Phantom Hourglass and I put it into my DS and started playing, I was really impressed with how well it actually worked. And I remember at the time thinking like, really? Can Zelda be an iPhone game?
Yeah.
Can you really play it just by touching the screen and tapping the screen? Now, game design aside, game design in Phantom Hourglass, it leaves a little something to be desired for me personally. Sure. There are other games that are much more rewarding.
It is a little bit rinse and repeat throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that the touch controls actually worked pretty well. I have some negatives, but I want to hear how you feel about this.
Yeah, I think that they utilize. So they took the DS, which there were some games that utilized the stylus and the touch controls pretty well, like P-Cross, I think, was one.
Elite Beat Agents was a great example.
Yep, exactly. What was the one where you were a surgeon?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't know. Operation whatever.
Operation something. Operation Surgeon.
There was a Wii version of that too that actually wasn't half bad.
Nice. This one though, I think did more than the obvious of just like use a stylus to cut or use a stylus to tap on something that you can't touch. That would be harder to move a cursor over and click.
It brought it past a gimmick, I think.
Yeah. You really kind of, not only did you use it to move around on a map when you were in the boat, but some of your weaponry would utilize it. Like you could draw
all of them, I think.
Yeah, pretty much, right? So it was the first time that I think there was a game designed for the DS to be played the way that I would imagine the DS engineers designed the DS to be played, which is like held in one hand with a joystick and then stylus in the other to draw around and do cool stuff.
And if you technically need to, you can actually play Phantom Hourglass pushing 0 buttons.
Yeah.
They kind of, they map some hotkeys to the directional pad. And I think R becomes a hotkey for your weapon, or L, I mean.
Yep.
But you can technically do the whole thing right on the screen if you have to.
Yeah, I love that. I played that. I took a train from Chicago to New York. And this train hit a semi in Buffalo. So a 28-hour train ride turned into like a 32-hour train ride. Oh, my
goodness.
So I got through most of that game in one sitting on a train.
Wow.
It was great.
Sure. I mean, it's too bad for the truck, but playing the game. Yeah.
It afforded me that extra time to really.
I understand. I'm actually playing through Phantom Hourglass again right now on the Virtual Console on the Wii U.
Ooh.
And it's been a lot of fun. Sometimes I play it where the bottom screen is right on the Wii U controller and then I put the map up on the TV. Sometimes that's a bit much. I don't really need to do that. So I've actually been also doing that weird thing with the Wii U where you actually hold the controller sideways, or you could consider holding it like vertical, you could say. And it actually puts both screens on the Wii U and then you play that way.
Interesting.
And you still use the digital pad at the bottom.
Sure.
And that's why I've been playing it. It's actually not bad.
That's awesome.
It's kind of cool. So the touch controls, some of the things I didn't care for with the touch controls were some of the sword mechanics were a little bit broken. Like to actually do a roll, you have to pull your pen and do a scribble.
I do remember that, yeah.
And the other thing is that combat in Phantom Hourglass pretty much is eliminated because unfortunately to fight a baddie, you just tap on him and Link does the rest of the work.
Yep.
That was a little bit of a bummer. Sometimes, I mean, Zelda is all about the exploration and the puzzles and the meta game, or not the meta game, but like the big meta puzzles that happen in a dungeon. That's usually what the most fun is. But at the end of the day, I do feel that like the sword fighting in Zelda is also very fun.
Yeah.
Or should be at least.
There are some ways in which Zelda as in the trademark, can explore different styles of gameplay from different video games, but I think turning it into God of War is not one of them.
Just push a button.
Yeah.
And so like ultimately I think they succeeded with the touch controls in Phantom Hourglass. Some concessions had to be made, which left me hungry for more. But I do think that was a game changer because there was a sequel with the touch controls.
Yep.
And I think the only reason we didn't see that anymore, why did it fade? I'm just thinking about this right now. Well, actually, I think in between Spirit Tracks.
Yeah, historically there was another big title, wasn't there?
So A Link Between Worlds is the 3DS one.
Yeah.
That just went back to the old Super Nintendo controls, basically, I believe.
Right. Well, I think that that was sort of the eve of remaking older games for the newer consoles, and this one drew from that by using the same map as Link to the Past.
Yeah.
And so you still get the hit of nostalgia while you're playing that game, and I think that helped amp people up. But that would have been probably a pretty big disaster if it used the same types of controls as Spirit Tracks.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Before we move on, because we're going to do your 4, and then I think we'll go to break and we'll do the other 3 on the other side of the break. I just got done saying a few minutes ago, like, oh, I'd love a HD Skyward Sword just without the motion controls if they could figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Could Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks work any other way?
You could tell the same story any other way.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're riding around on a boat for most of Wind Waker, so...
It's a lot of drawing with the pen on the screens. They have a lot of mechanics deal with pulling the map down and actually drawing your own notes on the map.
I'm trying to think of how that would work on a Switch. There's no use of the stylus yet.
I guess on a Switch
like
you kind of still have the touch. You could do
the Wii U
Zelda
for sure. You could
touch
obviously
with the stylus. Do you feel that you have a Switch? Do you feel that you could play it with your finger, just touching the screen?
I don't think so.
Just I think Mario Maker kind of needs a stylus on the Switch when and if that happens.
Yep. Maybe there's some peripheral that they could come out with to aid in that. I don't know what that would look like. Maybe it's an iOS.
Would
app
Spirit Tracks work with Super Nintendo controls?
Would Spirit Tracks work? Yeah, I mean, any of these games would work, I think.
Yeah.
I think you would have to reinvent the battle mechanics, similar to what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
For that remake, right?
Yeah,
so it's going from turn-based RPG to sort of, I guess, live action.
Live action, we could say. Yeah.
Whatever it's called, which I am in favor of.
Sure. Yeah. I guess if you're going to play the game again, give it a little twist.
Yeah. Why not?
Alex, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is assisted jumping in Ocarina of Time.
Oh, I love it. I don't have that.
Okay. So I think
Absolute game changer.
Not only is it a game changer for Zelda for myriad reasons, one being it doesn't exist without a 3D Zelda, which is like another game changer, but not one that I captured here. But the assisted jumping in Ocarina of Time, I think, is a very good game design move.
Oh, it's amazing. I am so impressed with how it works in the code, and I hope you speak to that.
Well, I don't know how it works in the code.
Maybe I'll talk about it a little bit, but keep going.
Okay. I've come to appreciate a lot of remakes of older games coming to iOS, and intellectual property like Mario as well coming to iOS.
Right.
Because you have limited controls with regard to, like, if you took any platformer where you have to run, sprint, jump, change direction, fire a weapon, charge a weapon, things like that.
Yeah.
You've got repetitive things that you can assume as the game designer that the user is always going to be doing. So in the case of Mario Run, you always assume Mario is going to be running left to right.
Right.
So you just do that for the user. You let the user jump, double jump, whatever.
Yeah.
In the case of Mega Man, remade for iOS, the X Buster is always charging because you can, in Mega Man X, you're always going to be charging your X Buster.
Interesting.
What I liked about Ocarina of Time is that, yes, whenever you're running toward an edge, you're going to jump.
Right.
That it doesn't necessarily make the gameplay any easier because you have to be moving in the right direction. It just means that the decision to jump, you're deciding where to jump, not when to jump. Because I think the when to jump is the easy part. And like game developers even do that as well. They make jumping from platform to platform very forgiving because it's probably the easiest part about the jump.
Unless it's a platforming game, but you're absolutely right.
Exactly. Well, you look at like Halo.
Right.
If you're jumping from platform to platform in 3D space in Halo, a lot of times you're going to be jumping too late in the actual 3D environment. Mm-hmm. So the developers will let you jump after you've technically fallen off of a ledge.
I feel like a lot of people learned off that first Turok game for Nintendo 64 where the jumping was horrible because it was kind of real or whatever. Like you really could accidentally walk off the edge and stuff.
Well, and a camera in that type of game isn't where your eyeballs would be in real life.
That's true.
So there's a little bit of dissociation with when you think you should jump in this game world because your eyeballs are not where the camera are in the game world. So they make that part of it really forgiving. But what you do have full control over is where you're jumping.
Yeah.
They did the same thing.
Also, to speak to that idea of when the original Legend of Zelda was being developed and the original Super Mario Brothers were being developed, they were being developed at the same time. I spoke to this in our Hyrule Fantasy episode. But the idea with Mario is that the gameplay is the jumping.
Yeah.
The gameplay is how do you successfully execute jumping. And with Zelda, it was designed back 30 years ago to be the opposite of that. Sure. It was supposed to be not about jumping. There is no jumping in the original Legend of Zelda. And so to decide to make that essentially automatic through the way that you just described it, I think very well, still fits into that Zelda philosophy. We don't need Link to jump. I mean, then they all of a sudden have him jump in Breath of the Wild, but that's a different conversation for a different time because I think they made the right choice there because of the way that game engines have evolved.
Yes.
But I think the auto jumping Link is perfect. And also, if I may, a great example of that is how the auto jumping does not work in a game like Star Fox Adventures.
I have never played that game.
So as we get into seasons 2 and 3, we're going to be doing more review episodes of Zelda games, but we've decided to at least one a season do like a Zelda-like review.
Sure.
Beyond Good and Evil's in the docket. Star Fox Adventures is in the docket.
Smash Brothers would be a good one.
Well, I'm trying to find...
Zelda-like in its mechanics or Zelda-like in its
mechanics?
Okay, gotcha.
Definitely. I mean, maybe we can do like a spin-offs episode.
No. Listen, Smash. You don't need to placate me, Dave. I'm an adult. I can take...
Maybe that's how we have you on in season 2 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
All right, that's cool.
I'm the guy who always gets it wrong.
Well, actually, you might know more about some of these spin-offs than I do. But anyway, in mechanics. So in The Legend of Zelda, the auto jump is... I'm going to make this really simple because even I don't fully understand it, but the auto jump is a trigger connected to Link's character model.
Sure.
So when a certain pixel thing is feeling for a certain lack of pixels or hitting the edge of a polygon, Link's character, almost like a remote control, feels that and auto jumps.
Yeah.
In Star Fox Adventures, they actually mapped the jump to the environment.
Interesting. So
this is a wall you can jump off of. This is a wall you can't. The reason is because in Star Fox Adventures, they wanted the graphics to look a little more realistic than Zelda. So if you think about Ocarina of Time, you can jump off of something because that is a 90-degree angle.
Yes.
Edge of a ledge, and you also know that you cannot jump off something that is not 90 degrees or something like that, or less than that. Our brain understands the mechanics. We decide where we can and can't jump by reading the geometry of the level, not by pushing a button. In Star Fox Adventures, they were trying to make it a little bit more graphically impressive, and so it's a lot of hidden walls or invisible walls, and then auto jumping again programmed to the level.
Oh, interesting.
So it's incredibly frustrating because every once in a while you'll hit to an edge and you can't trust the game. You go, can I jump off of this?
Yeah.
Can I not?
Yeah,
like what? And then all of a sudden Fox slides off or he doesn't, and it's so much better to know that if Link is coming down Death Mountain in Ocarina of Time and you clip the edge and he jumps into the abyss, you know why it happened.
Yes.
Yep. And so that's all I wanted to speak to, is that the code is attached to the character, not to the level, which I think is very important.
Yeah, and that's all part of design, and the engineering part of this is as much game design as like colors and UI, and
that's one of my favorite things about video games in general is that
yeah.
it's a wonderful merge of the art and the engineering. I was having an interview with a guy in our 17th episode, and he was talking about how video game development is so exciting for him because you'll see engineers accidentally become artists. You'll see artists accidentally become engineers because they have to, just because these worlds start to merge.
Absolutely.
On that note, why don't we go to break and we're gonna come back and do our final three.
Let's do it.
Amazing. Hey everyone, David Geisler here, and I am very excited to share that we have just launched our Patreon page for Another Zelda podcast. Patreon is a great way for creators to grow their content, and we're really looking forward to using this space as a way to say thank you to our listeners. We'd love to have your support, and we've put together some rewards that we're pretty excited about. Things like additional uncut bonus content, custom wallpapers, and of course, early access to all of our episodes. So if you like, after the show, head on over to our page at patreon.com/Another Zelda podcast. You can also find a link to the page in our show notes. Thank you very much. All right, we are back from the break. Alex, how are you? What are you making tea over there? What are you doing?
Sorry, no, it's not tea. Unless you count coffee grounds in the coffee as like when tea. Oh, I got it.
Pulling something out of your drink.
Well, I got the little coffee ground out.
Sounds good. Excellent.
Top 10 coffee grounds, Dave. Let's go. 5.
That'll be in season 6. Perfect. Top 10 coffee grounds drink when playing Link's Awakening. We have to be careful because we're gonna have to get really specific with our topics by the time season 6 comes around.
That's fine. Listen, Dave, I believe there was a famous poet who once said specificity is the soul of narrative.
Whoa.
That'd be William Shakespeare.
Yeah, very good. I like it.
Yeah. I can take it or leave it. It's not in my top 10.
Oh, amazing. Alex, thank you again for being on this episode and let me drive out here to Madison and hang out with you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for driving out. That's
my pleasure.
It's a little bit of a road trip to get out here.
A little bit of a road trip, but I'm combining it with some other 6.5 work, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. I hear I'm meeting someone after this.
Oh, yeah. You're meeting the Top Hat Balloon guys. They're Max, one of the producers over at Top Hat Balloon for the Top Hat Balloon show, is he actually has left a couple comments on the Zelda podcast.
Oh, terrific!
So when Zelda comes back in season 2, it'll be the Top Hat guys doing their thing. I'm trying to squeeze a show out of you. We'll see if that ever happens.
Keep squeezing, baby.
All right, Alex, let's get back in here. I decided to switch my 2 and 3s on break. They are almost tied, but I decided to switch it up. And believe it or not, my third most favorite, my third, most important, my thoughts on something that's the most important game changer is the open world in Breath of the Wild. Not number 1 or something like that, even though I think it was a massive game changer.
And this is a positive for you.
It's positive,
to be clear.
Yeah,
okay.
We're starting to go into the positives for me.
Great.
Yeah, open world for Breath of the Wild. I think it's kind of just a given. That's clearly a game changer. The game was literally changed by having it finally be open world. For so many years, for Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, for so many years, Zelda wasn't open world. Some argue Wind Waker is technically open world, and I actually agree with that, but it wasn't open world in the way that we understand it to be these days.
Yeah, it almost felt like there was a level designated to wander around in.
Yeah.
For like Ocarina, that's larger Hyrule and like maybe the ranch, possibly.
Yeah, you have your home hub or whatever.
But it's not truly open world in that it's still linear and
Wind Waker did it by kind of doing open world where you can technically travel anywhere non-linearly in Wind Waker. So definitively it might be open world, but I feel that it's kind of a stretch because literally the content is so stretched out.
Yeah, sure.
Like they justify it by having it be that you're traveling across the ocean, but really what that does is that just means that there's miles and miles of geography that you don't need to build.
Yes.
Let's face it.
Yep.
Where that is not the case with Breath of the Wild or other games. Again, like Witcher or Red Dead or Skyrim or any of those other games where a lot of this architecture is built or geography is built.
Spider-Man, I've been playing.
Oh, yeah.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm hearing good things.
Top 10 Spider-Man games. Go.
I'm hearing good things. So I feel that open world in Breath of the Wild, I'm considering a game changer because for me, it is, I've said this in the past, that it was Breath of the Wild, when I play it now as an adult, it's how, in my imagination, Ocarina was when I played that as a kid.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it felt so big, Ocarina, when I was a kid. When you look at it now, you're like, oh, okay, it's really not. It's just kind of a hub.
You don't need fast travel in it because
true.
you can get across the entire map in a good 3 real minutes.
Yeah,
something
it's
like
true.
that. Yeah.
I think the day-night cycle is only like a minute and a half or something like that when you're actually out there in Hyrule Field. So I had no problem including that in my top 5 game changers. I also think that it's valid. I'm going to kind of debate it here a little bit, even though I feel like I don't need to. I think it's valid because Aonuma has said that future Zelda installments will continue with this, I guess, game engine now, the engine and the mechanics and everything. He has literally said, and I quote, "My eyes have been opened to how important it is," now I'm paraphrasing, "to be able to wander wherever you want in Zelda games and how important that is for Zelda players."
Yeah.
Because initially he had a little bit, I'm so sorry, I kept going here, but initially he had some reservations with the open worldness of Breath of the Wild and was a little bit resistant, but it was some of the younger developers that were on the Zelda team that really pushed for it because he was a little worried about letting go of your narrative control like in Twilight Princess, which is incredibly linear.
Yeah, but I feel like even in those older games, not that Twilight Princess is that old, a lot of the narrative in the...
Oh, dude, we're going on like a decade right now on Twilight Princess.
Oh my God, that's true. Let's say of the 3D Zeldas, I feel like almost, not all, but like a majority of the narrative is told by people chiming in your ear with over text.
Yeah.
Right. So you get like narrative dungeon to dungeon, but a lot of it is going to be like from your Navi or your Midna's or
your Eslo in Minish Cap. Even that's a 2D one, but still.
Yeah. I still counted. It happened after
Fi or Fi, the sword in Skyward Sword.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm glad he was talked into the open worldness of it because I think a lot of the narrative can be told through other levers, not just you start with the forest temple and you end with the whatever temple.
I absolutely love personally David Geisler. I love, a temple is a dungeon is not a temple. That's like the golden rule. I adore that when I'm in the Breath of the Wild universe, David Geisler, the player, can just make the choices that David Geisler would make if he were out in that space for real.
Yeah.
Narratively, I will go to that mountain. I will go here. I will check this out. I'll go there.
And in master mode, just like Alex Sheehan, the real person, I was immediately murdered by the first dangerous thing.
Master mode, I'm in the middle. I'm about 20 hours into master mode right now, and I'm absolutely in love with it.
So you're about halfway through that first group of bokoblins?
No. I'm through. Was it the bird? I forget the bird. Vametto or something like that, I think is the bird.
Yeah.
I went for whatever is Gale. I forgot his name now. The guy who starts with an R. The bird, the cocky bird. Rivaldi's Gale.
That is my most used of the four.
Yes, me as well.
Sure.
I went for Mipha's Grace when I played the game first. This time it was straight for Rivaldi for jumping around to save on stamina. It's
I just don't get hit, so I don't use the Gorons.
The Goron one? I'm actually going for Goron second right now. I just received it. So I'm 2 beasts in on master mode. I'm treading very lightly, very slowly, very carefully. I'm in love with it. It feels like I'm playing the game for the first time all over again.
It's so hard.
But with all that said, yes, it is, but I love it. With all that said, open world, Legend of Zelda, open world, Breath of the Wild, clearly it's a game changer, I feel like. I feel like that's almost an obvious one. Do you have thoughts?
In that, it feels like a different game entirely.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of the open world aspect of it. There's a lot of things that may or may not have made my top 3.
Oh, great.
That also make it an entirely new game, right? The open worldness, the non-linear storyline. You can go straight to Ganon and fight him if you want.
Yep.
Which I would recommend trying.
Some people, I have one little master mode story that I did tell in a previous episode, so I'll just tell it quickly here. I understood the value of the Hylian shield, in my regular playthrough. I got it about halfway through.
Hylian too?
So we were told by many listeners.
Hylian as well, right?
I've said Hylian, but we were told by many listeners that it's Hylian.
Yeah.
It's like Jillian. It's not Jillian. It's Jillian.
Yeah.
So it's not Hylian. It's Hylian.
I think they also say Hylian in
the game.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Which until then, I don't think it's been uttered.
For years, I've said Hylian because it just felt correct.
Me too.
But it's Hylian.
Oh, I feel like such an idiot, Dave.
Just remember the name Jillian, and it's not that, and it's Hylian. That's how I remember these days.
That is the worst mnemonic I have ever heard in my life.
It's not that thing.
Okay, remember the name Jillian, which is not that common of a name anyway. So that name, but not that name.
Easy.
Got it.
Anyway, I don't even remember what we were talking about. Breath of the Wild.
I think you were letting me talk.
Oh, the shield. You were saying like going straight to Ganon right in the beginning.
Yeah.
I went straight. After I got the even before Vametto in my master mode, I went for that shield and I got it.
Nice.
I souped up with some cooked elixirs and stuff, which I don't normally do.
I think you only have to defeat one big enemy for that.
Yeah, it's
right?
like a skeleton version of one of those Cyclopses, which is a bit tough.
Sure.
I bought a whole bunch of arrows and I elixired up massively, and I went in there with like 4 hearts and I got it.
I like to get elixered up too.
So my master mode right now, I'm running around with the Hylian shield. I'm loving it.
You are killing guardians. You're blasting lasers back at them.
I've been avoiding the guardians like the plague in master mode, but I don't know. I'm not great with that timer on the.
Oh, I'm so bad at it. It's awful.
There are days where I'm like just nailing it. It's like beep beep, and I'm great. And then other days I just can't get it. I don't know why.
Yeah, there's some psychopaths on YouTube who have just like. There's one. I don't know. He does like a backflip off of one of the tall. What are the towers?
Oh yeah,
one of the towers.
And shield
like
surfs
3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I have seen some of those videos.
Oh, I just wish I was that good at anything, especially top 10 lists. If I was that good at top 10 lists, this episode would be your highest rated episode.
Oh, I'm having a lot of fun. What is your number 3, Alex?
My number 3 is Destructible Inventory. Big time game changer.
Indeed. I do not have that.
Great way, I think. I think that it opens up. So where they took puzzles away, having a destructible inventory creates sort of like a meta puzzle in itself, because you're adding side quests to unlock slots in your inventory, first of all, because you start out with a very limited number of slots for both shields and bows and arrows and melee weapons.
Right.
And as you go through the game, you can unlock those with all the Korok side quests. And they're not even really side quests. They're just like a passive thing that exists in the game. And as you get Korok seeds, you can bring them back to a character by the Great Deku Tree and unlock slots in your inventory.
Hetsu is his name.
Hetsu. Thank you. Gesundheit. Oh, I missed it. It would have been a great joke. So that becomes a little meta game in and of itself.
6 dads that are listening to this podcast just now were like, I got to remember that. Next time my son says Hetsu. God. All right. Anyway.
So good. The inventory control becomes an issue. But then destructible inventory, this is where I think they didn't quite get it right in Breath of the Wild yet.
Let's talk about it.
There's other games that do this same type of inventory system like Diablo, like Witcher, and they do it really well. But there's affordances that, not even really affordances. The game forces you to destroy your weapons to a degree. And with Zelda, you don't have to do that. You have to use, until you get the Master Sword, I guess you have to do that. But there's nothing telling you and assuring you that it's okay to break these weapons. So you sort of get this feeling like it's sort of the ammo situation in Resident Evil.
Yes.
Where they use a lack of ammo to create fear and anxiety in a game like Resident Evil, where you're trying to do that.
Every bullet matters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in Breath of the Wild, it serves no purpose other than the person using the game doesn't know that it's fine to just like go nuts and break these weapons.
Well, yeah, your instincts in the beginning are you pick up a couple sticks because that's all that's there, maybe a shovel, right?
Yep.
And you're like, I guess this is what I have. Breaks halfway through one fight, and you're like, what?
Exactly.
This is a thing? So when you do find that first rusty sword in front of the Temple of Time or something.
I can't use this on anything. I gotta save this for Ganon.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. You're also, it's so wonderful to get then. You're like, not a stick. So maybe you use it a little bit, you switch back and forth, but it really it does put value on these weapons.
It's anxiety inducing. Now, I think where what might improve it is if they in future games allow you to save games like Witcher, games like Diablo, they give you a percentage value of how broken an item is, and you can go back and you can fix it.
Oh, that's nice.
Now here with the shield, with the Hylian shield, you can go buy the Hylian shield again, and the Master Sword regenerates by itself. So that once you get the Master Sword, you kind of lose the anxiety, but then you only use the Master Sword.
Yeah. I mean, there are other weapons you find later in the game that are stronger than the Master Sword.
Yes.
So there are times where like, it's time to use the big, huge sword of blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
But then you really do hang out with that Master Sword.
Yeah. Because you can kill everything with the Master Sword, especially with the DLC when you make it the Super Master Sword.
Yeah. I have not done that yet.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's that is so fun.
I've completed much of the DLC. That is like this is the Trial of the Sword that you're speaking about, right? Yeah.
Yes, I'm nodding my head yes as I take a sip of coffee.
Took a sip. I asked him a question just as the cup was going up to his mouth. I'm so sorry. Bad podcasting. But Trial of the Sword is like my final DLC thing that I haven't pushed through yet. But I always get 1 or 2, I guess, save points in, and I'm loving it. I just haven't gotten all the way to the end yet.
Yeah. I think Man, that is a game changer too. That didn't make it on my list, Dave.
What's that? What is a game changer? Honorable mention.
Just having the Trial of the Sword, right? Like this.
I'll listen.
It's an entirely new game. It's a meta game, but not in the way that any other meta thing within Zelda has existed before.
I didn't like it at first because I thought it was just an excuse to have a monster gauntlet, but I think it is more than that.
No, I think, well, for better or worse, it does unlock bits of gameplay in the actual full game, which I like more. Like Hollow Knight is one that the latest DLC for Hollow Knight, which is an amazing game. It's a Metroidvania type platformer thing.
Yeah.
It does just, the latest DLC is just a gauntlet for all the bosses.
Okay.
Which is fine.
Sure.
But it doesn't really do anything for you in the real game. But this gives you a super boosted Master Sword.
Oh, wow. I never knew.
Which is great, but then you only use the Master Sword because you can use it to defeat any enemy.
That's why I still use some of those other swords, I think.
Yeah.
My Master Sword's still only at 30.
Right.
It's like, oh, it never breaks, but it's only 30. And there's clearly 80s and 90s out there.
Yes.
You know?
I think that there's some levers they could pull to make it to help push you and nudge you in the right direction to use some of these swords. They kind of lean into it a little bit in the beginning, where if you're using one of the guardian weapons, it is good against specific types of enemies. Yep. When you're using the bone weapons, there's some suit you can put on to make the bone weapons harder and better and stronger. So they do a little bit of it, but I don't think it goes far enough to really encourage you to use a fully destructive inventory system. Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, like, what other games do well, like Witcher and Diablo, is, I alluded to this before, there's like a percentage value of how broken a thing is. And when you get back to a town or whatever, you can repair your favorite weapons.
I think repairing would be kind of cool in Breath of the Wild. I think you also brought up a great point about how in the beginning, these weapons are breaking left and right. And in the first 5 hours that someone plays Breath of the Wild, I have seen many people get that anxiety, and maybe not in a good way. Some people have even been like, I can't play this game. There's been some people that almost put it down because it's too stressful.
That's what the time mechanic did for me in Majora's Mask. But
yeah, well, Kate kind of Fisher, my co-host, would agree with you on that. But once you do kind of cross that line and you get one beast in, let's just say, or you get a couple levels in where you are grabbing a bunch of swords, you do start to realize that they are expendable. But then I think in the very beginning of your point, you mentioned the metagame of weapon management.
Yes.
And that's where that starts kicking in. Kind of, you almost have a deck of weapons.
Right.
And then trying to decide, I will use this one for this bad guy, I won't use this one for that one. I think that it really does come full circle, and it's a very nice feature.
It's a very nice feature, but I think it's half-baked. Now that we're talking about it too, once you get your house, spoiler alerts, you get a house.
Yep.
You can keep a limited number of weapons and shields in that house.
Yes.
So it's sort of like you have this loadout mechanic that you can utilize. But I still think that you're not given, there needs to be an infinite number of something in one of these steps of the pipeline, whether it's being able to repair your stuff or keep in a limited number of this stuff somewhere so that you can create a cool loadout if you know that you're going to be going for some specific tower where there's ghosts hopping around. I forget what their actual Zelda name is. Pose.
Love it.
The easiest one.
No, dude, listen, the first 4 or 5 episodes of this podcast, I said everything wrong.
Yeah.
I was saying Ocarina on the first episode. I was so embarrassed, but fortunately our listeners have been very kind and they help us along the way with pronunciations and things like that. So these days I'm accidentally kind of I'm leaning more towards actually knowing what I'm talking about with all these characters, because we have to say their names every couple weeks. Yeah. So it's the pose. So don't feel bad that you don't remember, because I used to call them bats and ghosts and pigs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But it's
the big pig in the castle.
He's
in the castle. He's a big pig. That'd be Ganon Dave.
So anyway, so the pose. And all that.
So if there was one of those steps in the pipeline that was infinite in terms of either keeping weapons on hand or that's the thing too, is like if they were more liberal with handing out all of the different types of weapons, I think people would be more inclined to smash them up. Yeah. Even if it meant having to travel back to a certain specific point on the map to get back to that weapon that they like.
I agree. And as you're talking about this, I'm thinking maybe it would be nice, but maybe I don't need the percentage countdown of the weapon, because it does give you a little bit of a cue.
Sure.
But not rechargeable, but basically, the ability to fix a weapon.
Yes.
With, maybe there's a shop in each town where you can do that if you needed to, or maybe only a select number of towns have that, or maybe there is 1 or 2 secret characters that can do that. I think that would be nice. There's that weird little hack where you can have the the creatures that hide under the ground that suck. See, now I can't remember a name. That suck in your bad rusty shield and spits out a nice shield or a rusty.
Oh, they look like lasagna in the original Legend of Zelda.
Oh,
What are they called? They're in like every Zelda.
they're not the Deku the Deku guys, are they?
No. They're
I know. It's okay.
I need my Wikipedia connection, Dave.
Yeah, I'm about a week away from owning the Legend of Zelda encyclopedia, and I'm actually quite excited about that.
Nice.
Kate has the red and green one, and I'm going to pick up the blue one. She'll probably get the blue one too, but anyway, it'll be very fun to finally actually have a reference, because it's not like we have like a global network of information right here
in
at our
pockets
fingertips
on several devices that we could look this up on the device that we play these games on or something.
Oh my goodness!
Do you remember the web browser for the DS?
Oh,
That was kind of a flop.
I used the web browser on the DS to apply for jobs.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh geez, Dave.
This is like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Maybe it was about 10 years ago. And I had just moved to Milwaukee and I didn't have everything set up yet. And I went to a library and I used the web browser on my DS where you had to have a little RAM expansion card in.
That's
and
awesome.
I started pushing through Craigslist and I started applying on my DS, my
Amazing.
friend.
That is amazing.
That is the most use that browser ever got in the entire
If you could have
nation.
captured that on your CV, that's sort of like utilitarianism that I think anyone would find valuable at any type of job.
I do remember that web browser. Anyways, did you actually just catch that bug?
I caught that bug, Dave.
Wow, that was amazing. Alex just snapped a fly out of the air
Out of the thin air.
with his bare hands and ate it, which was weird.
Well, this is a long podcast, Dave. I need my energy.
Just for the record, he did not eat. Alex Sheehan does not eat bugs.
Not on Mike.
on air.
Not on Mike.
Okay, let's see. My number two then. I'm saving my number one. I'm actually kind of excited to talk about it, even though I think it might be a quick conversation. My number two, this might sound anticlimactic, but I actually think you got to think it through, and it actually means a lot. My number two most favorite game changer, it's so hard to say this correctly, is the open world.
That was your number three.
In The Legend of Zelda. The original The Legend of Zelda.
Oh, okay. So it's a game changer in that it was a brand new game.
It was a game changer in that at the time, a completely loaded up, down, left, and right world that didn't change was a very new concept.
Absolutely, it was. It almost felt in that way like there were some elements of a board game to it.
The ideas of not having levels.
Right.
You know, that where you could play the dungeons out of order. It's easy to forget that the original The Legend of Zelda.
And now, Dave, I'm going to put on my comic book guy hat for a minute and correct you there, because technically they are levels in that game, not dungeons.
Tell me about it. Because they actually say level,
They actually
don't
say
they?
level 1 through 9.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, sorry.
In the little thing up there.
The little HUD.
Right, but to say that there's not levels the way there is a Mario game, or at the time when, you know, I spoke about this a lot in our the Hyrule Fantasy episode, but at the time, this idea of having this kind of, famously Miyamoto said, I wanted to give players a garden that they could walk around with. That was his way of kind of describing this experience. That idea of having a world that is static or always there and you can move through it however you want was bonkers.
Yeah.
Back in
To
the
use the
80s.
technical term.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's Miyamoto was quoted in saying that. No, not at all. So I want to put that in there. I think that actually, I believe almost more than Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild is also following suit to other open world games that have been working.
Well, not only that, Breath of the Wild followed suit to that game in particular. Before they made their physics and rendering engine for Breath of the Wild, they made a top-down 2D
basically
sandbox that they could play around in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They almost went back to that original engine and tried to work in some of the open world mechanics into that engine. And it is cool to see those videos for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
So the reason I decided to put the open world in The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System above Breath of the Wild is because I think it's hard for us to really comprehend this, anyone who's played any of the Zelda games. But when The Legend of Zelda was in development, it was in many ways the original open world game.
Yeah, and I think it takes a little bit of a leap of faith to make a game like that as well on such a new medium as was Nintendo at that point.
Yeah.
The idea that so Mario you could play through in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the world record's a little higher than 5 minutes, but
We get it.
You get it. This game, this is before the internet. This is before periodicals were largely in circulation about Nintendo games. You would have to meet up with a coworker at the water cooler to figure out how they got through a certain dungeon or how they got the flute or something.
Absolutely.
And you could wander around forever not getting anything.
people played The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System for months.
Yeah.
We now can push through it in a couple hours. If
I
you
just
use
played it.
You know what I mean?
On Switch Online and
Right.
knocked it out in a couple hours.
Right. Yeah. If you really know what you're doing, where to go. But at the time when information was so slow to travel
Yeah.
from person to person. Also, another interesting thing about The Legend of Zelda, that original game, there's secrets in almost every screen. Something can be bombed in almost every screen. But at the time, the idea was people might only find 4 or 5 of them because there isn't internet forums saying bomb here, bomb here, bomb here, bomb here.
I think the only thing you absolutely have to get is the golden arrow, right? Because that's the only thing that hurts
I would
Ganon.
argue maybe also the raft, because I think you have to get to level 4. Level 4,
You're right.
with the raft.
Yes, you are right.
But I think everything else,
Do you have to bomb your way to the golden arrows? I don't think you do.
I can't recall.
I don't think you do.
Yeah, I think you
You don't
can
even have to get all the
technically
keys
go
either.
into the final dungeon before the 4th dungeon. You can technically get in there kind of early.
Yes.
You just get owned, which is actually, wow, Breath of the Wild parallels.
There you
But
go.
I guess that's part of the idea. So anyway, I wanted to kind of just put that out there. We don't have to talk about it too much. I hope you feel that that's a fair entry into our list here, the open world in The Legend of Zelda.
I think it is. I think that it is a literal game changer in that it changed games.
Indeed. More so than
Which
Breath of the
Zelda's
Wild.
done a couple times.
I mean, that's a good point. Alex,
Yes.
what is your second most... See, this is a favorite episode. I struggle every single time. There's no sentence to say this correctly.
10. Top 10 game changers, Dave.
Oh,
Change the course of Zelda gaming history.
You're right. It's a top 10 episode, not a favorites episode. That's
That-
next. That's next episode.
That's next. Top
getting a
10
little
favorite
confused.
top 10s is the next episode. My number 2 game changer in the Legend of Zelda series.
There it is.
Made by Nintendo Entertainment System for multiple platforms. That wasn't just Nintendo Entertainment System. Company's called Nintendo. Nintendo Entertainment System is the original NES. Don't at me.
Nice little run-on sentence here.
Removing dungeons and puzzles in Breath of the
Breath of
Wild.
the Wild.
From the Zelda universe.
Let's talk about it.
Why would you do that?
It is a controversial choice.
It is weird. I feel like, and I'm not the first person to say this, that Breath of the Wild is the perfect environment for a Zelda game. But there is nary a Zelda game to be found.
Yeah, you're kind of right.
There are the magnificent beasts and where you can find them in the northeast, southeast, southwest, southeast corners of the map. And those have some puzzles aspects to them.
Mm-hmm.
There are some shrines that have a little bit of puzzly nature to them, but there's nothing that you're like utilizing things you've picked up to solve a puzzle and like jump across a chasm or hook shot your way through a thing. There's some bow and arrow type thing, but I would say that those aren't even puzzles.
Yeah.
The puzzle part of it comes trying to find where things exist in the world and get to a shrine or find new weapons or buy a new thing or get a cool headdress. But none of them are puzzles.
I feel I have spoken many times to loving being in the Breath of the Wild universe and the entire system that is in place in the game engine. But Kate and I have agreed many times that we do kind of, boy, would it be nice to have at least a couple, maybe 4, anything.
A forest temple.
Couple, just give us a deep dive temple.
Yeah.
I think it's obvious. We've also talked about this in previous episodes, Alex. I think it's obvious that basically Nintendo took, or Aonuma and his team, they took the concept of maybe 8 temples or dungeons and just shotgun blasted little bits of them all over the place and called them shrines. Like the shrines technically take place of the dungeons in this game.
I guess they do. But
each shrine is like one room in a dungeon. But I miss the thematic, the forest temple, like where there's a large, I like it when one room connects to another room, which connects to another room, which connects to another room. And there's an emotion that happens as you move through those.
And you have to remember where you are in the map, and you have to remember how to get back. And like you'll see something in one room that you can't quite do yet until you get further into the temple.
I agree. I think that's lost
Dungeon,
a bit in Breath of the Wild.
Whatever they are.
It's okay. It's okay.
And I think it's gone. It's not there anymore.
A bit of it shows up in some of the larger shrines, and a bit of it shows up in some of the beasts, but not really.
I did the elephant. I almost said hippopotamus.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
a little bit in the hippopotamus with the big nose, but and that got me excited. Like the
Rudo or something. That one is. I can't remember.
I don't know. That was the first one I
Rudo.
did, and I thought, oh, this is going to be the greatest experience of my life.
Well, the elephant's the most puzzly, I think.
There were no more not really any puzzles.
When you have to figure out what to do with the trunk and stuff is super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
The I just did the lizard in for the Gorons in my Master Quest mode, and every single little beacon that you need to find is really pretty independent. There's not a lot of puzzles going on. There's a little bit, but nothing that's more than what would be in a shrine, to be honest.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that while they did create the perfect environment for a Zelda game, they have only done just that.
I think the big thing is when they chose to go open world with Breath of the Wild, Nintendo put a lot of thought into, and this is spoken about in many interviews and articles that I have read, so I'm just kind of aggregating this together. They were very concerned about with making sure that people had reasons and wanted to go everywhere. They didn't want any real dead spots. They knew there was going to be a lot of empty open areas, but they didn't really want dead spots in the world. And so they actually used, that whole, I've talked about this, the DLC path, Heroes Path thing.
Yes.
That's actually a developer's tool that they used when they were testing the game.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
To see where people were and weren't going.
Sure.
And if they saw that there were cold spots, if you consider this a heat map, if they saw that there were cold spots, they'd actually put more treasures and not puzzles, but like hidden things in those areas.
Sure.
There were threads that people would tend to take. They'd tend to take a road, or they'd tend to jump off of a certain mountain or something like that. And so it was on the minds. It was on the minds of the developers to try to get people to go everywhere. So I think what they did is they sacrificed the classic temple, its classic dungeon, shot it all over the place so that you had little bits of dungeons, fragments of dungeons all over the place. And yes, it did help you move all over the map, but I do miss the connected.
Yeah, I just don't see how that means you can't have the dungeons.
So I guess the point I was trying to get to, which I wasn't doing a good job, but you've just helped me remember, is Breath of the Wild is so different. Many argue for the better. Breath of the Wild is so different than something like Twilight Princess that I think Nintendo needed to help the players go everywhere and anywhere.
So give them a blank slate.
Yeah, a little bit.
And
I would hope that in a Breath of the Wild sequel, maybe now that we're used to wanting to travel everywhere.
Breaths of the Wild.
Breaths of the Wild. I hope in Breaths of the Wild. You've heard it here first. I'm loving it. I'm calling it Breaths of the Wild.
I'm going to register that domain real quick. Breaths of the Wild. Zelda. And they can buy it from me if they want it.
Fantastic. So in Breaths of the Wild, I genuinely hope that maybe now that we're used to traveling everywhere and wanting to travel everywhere, not needing a character like a Midna or a Navi telling us exactly where to go, maybe we could have some slightly more focused areas.
And that'd be nice.
It would. So yeah, breaking down the dungeons.
Dave.
Yeah.
We are now
We're on our tops.
The main event. The top favorite game changers of favorites of all favorite time.
Top 10, indeed. So mine is, I think, I would hope that you would agree with me here. I think another game changer, and we saw this after this mechanic was introduced, we saw it explode into other video games in every single system and developer. I think the biggest game changer that any Zelda game has ever actually brought to the video game industry is Z-targeting.
That was Zelda.
Yep.
Wow. That is okay.
Ocarina of Time introduced
Can I change my number one to be the same as your number one? That is brilliant. That's the same thing. That's the same kind of great game design as the assisted jumping is, because you take a thing that the characters are going to want to be doing all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, in an Ocarina of Time, it was even configurable. You could hold to target or tap to target and tap to untarget. That is amazing.
It takes the 3D game, the combat, and turns it into 2D combat, but for the better.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So it's not, you're no longer having to control the camera angles like you would in a Mario 64 to get through, to like walk some plank on the side of some cliff face.
Correct. And as long as you're Z-targeting, you know that Link is going to swing towards the enemy, so you can focus more on the strategy of, is the enemy holding a shield or not holding a shield? Is the enemy about to attack or not attack? Not like, am I facing the right way?
Well, it introduces two different modes to interacting with the world. There is the quote unquote open world mode where you're not Z-targeted.
Let's call it the Super Mario version.
The
Mario walk version. Anywhere.
Yeah, where you're walking anywhere and the cameras are making a little, they're making a few assumptions about where they should be. But you can reorient them by tapping the target button.
That Z, but anyway.
And then there is the battle mode where you are Z-targeted and your controls are familiar, so you can lean into what attack, like what you press to attack and what you press to strafe left and right.
I would go so far as to say the controls don't change at all. they're informed by the camera angle, but technically your analog stick doesn't change what it does. Your buttons don't change what they do.
Well, you jump backwards. You get the backflip thing.
Oh, you don't have that in
the
normal. You're right.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I stand corrected. You're right.
I think it takes a lower angle as well.
The camera comes down in, kind of
so,
over the shoulder
so
almost.
it's two very distinct modes in my my memory.
Yeah, Link gets new moves when he's Z-targeting. I keep interrupting. I'm so sorry. I'm just letting you talk.
That's fine. And I think that that makes it feel a little like open world RPG-ish in a way. It feels more like a turn-based RPG. Not obviously, it's not turn-based, but two distinct modes.
Yeah, you're right. Wow, I love it. You're right.
It just kind of opens up.
You're just hot swapping inside and out of that mode.
You really are. And and I love that they also use it as a mechanic in non-battle instances as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to characters and things like that to look up and down, because in Zelda they took away the C buttons as camera controls and it became item selection, and your only real camera control is you can see up to do like a first person just look around thing. But really it is just using Z to have the camera whip around behind Link. And I do remember when I first played Ocarina, it took me about 20 minutes to like that. At first I was like, I want to just move the camera left and right. Of course now in Breath of the Wild we've got that on the right stick and stuff like that. But after a while you get used to just recentering that camera with Z, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. So it eliminated the, am I facing the right way? Am I pointing at the right thing? Am I talking at the right thing? Even in Super Mario 64, if you go up to read a sign, am I really standing in the right spot?
Yeah.
Am I not? With Z targeting, as long as those 4 triangles come in, you know you're on the sign.
You are ready to go. Man, that is a great number 1.
So I think that changed the game industry. And actually that one final tidbit about that is when Miyamoto, this is pre-Anuma being super involved, he was a co-producer, he was involved with Ocarina, but he was a slightly lower level. Now it's all Anuma these days, with Miyamoto basically saying like, that looks good. Miyamoto was actually trying to pull a lot of the mechanics from Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link combat into Ocarina. Now, Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link has a very robust, all things considered, robust blocking system and shooting.
Okay.
You know, where you're ducking and not ducking when you're fighting the, not some of those Nintendo enemies that just Castlevania bombard you. No. But when you're coming up to one of the centaurs or the knights, and they're moving their shield up and down and you're trying to block and parry with your shield, that's actually significantly more robust than what we see in A Link to the Past or the original The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
And so that idea of holding the R button, are you blocking or not? Are you attacking? When should you attack? Are you going to hit their shield or not? Miyamoto has spoken about how he was actually pulling the inspiration from The Adventures of Link into Ocarina.
It made it so, again, like less of a hack and slash like God of War and more of a target and jump and attack.
You can hack and slash. You're just going to miss half of your hits. It's going to bounce right off, you know?
Yep.
Anyways, so Z targeting, let's keep moving.
Dang.
Alex.
Mine is...
What? Do you feel it's...
Mine...
What do you think was the biggest game changer in Zelda?
Oh, okay. Just like this character, mine is going to be so disappointing compared to what we all just talked
about.
Okay.
It's okay. Well, both of ours are ones. I'm just giving you the honors here of having the final say.
The monster from Majora's. This is Tingle. Changed the game forever.
I'll allow this.
For the worst.
Tingle. Tingle.
He shows up in Majora's Mask. He is this creepy 35-year-old forest-dwelling, obsessed with forest fairies cartographer?
He becomes a lot of things.
Why? Okay.
Tingle.
All right.
I mean, yes, this is definitely, Tingle is, in my opinion, definitely most of the time a blemish on the Zelda series.
And he's been in every game since Majora's Mask.
There's a technicality in Twilight Princess. He's not technically in it, but some of our listeners pointed out that he might have a secret cameo as one of the shop owners.
Ugh.
Like the face model is similar in one of the shops, but he's technically not in Twilight Princess, but he's been in everything else. I guess he's not in Breath of the Wild, but his clothes are. His clothes
so I'm glad they can make fun of it now.
But he has like 3 or 4 spin-off games in Japan.
Yeah. How? I mean, I guess like there's weird stuff. And like
very sensitive of you. Thank you.
Well,
anyway.
We're going to call space spade.
Okay, anyway.
Also, I don't know if that's a PC term either. Anyway, even in Wind Waker, you'd think that like a cute, cartoony, cel-shaded version would be less creepy.
Yeah.
But now let me just go ahead and turn this image to you.
Yes, it gets worse.
This is much creepier. He has like the
we're looking at Tingle in Wind Waker HD right now. His eyes got different,
His eyes got different. He has like the little blush in his cheeks that look like the little pinwheel things you'd find in a cup noodles. There is nothing settling about this character. There's nothing helpful about this character. He gives you maps in some games, but you could find maps anywhere. They're just lying around the dungeons in The Legend of Zelda.
In Wind Waker, the original Wind Waker, he actually kind of impedes your journey because he forces you to pay him a certain amount of money for each map when you're doing the Triforce quest in the second half of the game. And he requests money that is more than what you can hold in your wallet, if I remember correctly from how Kate Fisher explained it. That was removed in the HD version, which is what I played for review.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to replay the HD version. This is a different topic, but I hated Wind Waker so much on the original run.
If you haven't, I think you maybe haven't, but if you haven't listened to our Wind Waker episode, I encourage you to do so. It was definitely a mixed bag and an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Well, Tingle's my number one with special mention to Ankle, Knuckle, and David Jr.
What are we talking about
Those
right now?
are spin-off characters.
No.
Yeah.
In what, Minish Cap or something?
What was it? It might have been Four Swords.
Wow, maybe.
Possibly. Their Ankle and Knuckle are brothers.
Cool.
And David Jr., I don't know what that even is.
That's crazy. What is basically other Tingles dressed in different colored clothes, I'm guessing.
Yeah, pretty much.
There are some multicolored Tingles that show up in Minish Cap, and maybe they're a holdover from the Four Swords because Capcom developed both of those games.
Yes.
Interesting. Knuckle, Ankle,
and David Jr.
Fantastic. Maybe Tingle. The only cool thing about Tingle ever.
I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Yeah, it's a stretch.
Go ahead.
It is a stretch. The only cool thing about Tingle ever was the attempt to have the Tingle tuner in Wind Waker, where you use your Game Boy Advance as a second way of experiencing the game, where you would actually take your Game Boy, plug it in with that connector cord, and you could be a secondary player and actually view the game in a 2D top-down mode and help the player with certain information. That is the stretch of the century. That is the only cool thing that ever happened that was Tingle related.
The way you describe it is cool. That is a good way to make a Zelda a two-player game. But man, it could have been anything. It could have been any bird.
Yeah.
Any seafaring bird. It could have been your little dragon ship up in the crow's nest.
I agree. Someone somewhere fell in love with Tingle at Nintendo in the 2000s. Some marketing person or some developer or something, because he popped up everywhere for a while.
What I read in my, we'll call it 15 minutes of research for this episode.
Marvelous.
On the Zeldapedia page for Tingle, there's some... I guess like a rumor's the wrong word for it, but
a legend.
A legend, we'll call it, that he bears a mild resemblance to a Nintendo composer by the name of Koji Kondo.
Oh, really?
Who contributes to most of the Legend of Zelda music.
We just spoke about Koji Kondo in our previous episode.
So maybe it's a thank you or a fuck you to Koji Kondo.
Okay.
Tingle being in all of these games. But like, you'd think if they...
I've seen pictures of Koji. I don't think he looks like Tingle, but maybe that was the inspiration.
Maybe it was. But why would you do that to a guy? Unless in Japan, Tingle is that popular.
He was popular enough for some spin-off games in Japan.
Man, why would you do that?
I don't know. There's a thing. But anyway, yes, we shall see if Tingle ever shows up again. What's the closest thing to Tingle in breath besides his clothes? Maybe it's the monster guy? Like a quirky character? The monster currency, the guy who sets his own monster currency?
Sure.
I forget his name.
Rides around in the hot air balloon.
Yeah. He's the closest thing to a quirky, odd character.
Yeah, maybe. I still feel that like... Come on.
You are so upset right now.
I'm so mad at Tingle. I will say that Tingle would make a perfect Super Smash Brothers character.
Maybe because he'd be so annoying.
I mean, it's a perfect game for him. Or maybe like
it would just be him going like, oh,
pretty much. Or what's the Hyrule Warriors? He could show up in Hyrule Warriors.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's in there already with some DLC or something.
Probably.
Like Agatha showed up at Hyrule Warriors.
Oh man, I couldn't play that game for. I played. We're getting off topic, but I played maybe the first like 3 areas, not even 3 levels, just areas, and I just got so upset.
It looked like it could be cool. I have not played it at all yet. I was excited about the concept, but I think ultimately it's mostly I'm hearing that it fails. But I don't want to be a hater on the game. At some point I'd enjoy trying it out.
Yeah.
But it's just Dynasty Warriors with Zelda characters Super Smash Brothering their way into some other universe.
Yes.
Basically is what I think
You
is
got
going
it.
on.
Yep.
All right, cool. Alex, we've been talking for a while. This was a meaty episode, but I'm pleased that we did it. Do you have any other final comments about game changers in Zelda games or anything like that?
I think until we did this, I didn't know the depth to which Zelda changed game mechanics. Really, yeah, Ocarina changed game mechanics
everything.
For everything.
The auto jumps,
games,
how to
the
navigate
auto
3D. We're both saying. Are you repeating me?
I thought you were repeating me.
Yeah. I mean, Super Mario 64 and Ocarina 64 before it became Ocarina of Time, or Zelda 64 before it became Ocarina of Time. That was a very impactful time. Miyamoto changed the industry with those games.
Allowed for battle cycles in boss fights where you'd get them in like 2D platformers, like Mega Man would have obvious cycles for any of the bosses in like Mega Man X, right?
Right.
But this was the first time that you could make pretty complex choices with character and level design where you're hook-shotting to specific pillars in the Fire Temple.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for... Oh, not Fire Temple. No, that was...
Well, the hookshot's in the Forest Temple. You do use it a little bit.
No.
Water Temple?
Nope, not even Ocarina.
Okay.
In
Fabulous.
Twilight Princess.
Okay.
The dragon that you fight in Twilight Princess, don't you have to hookshot around to a bunch of different pillars?
Oh, that's Wind Waker. That's Dragon Roost Island in Wind Waker.
Oh, man.
It's all good.
I need to play all these games again.
No, believe me, again, those first 4 or 5 episodes where Kate and I recorded this, the panic that would flush over me when I couldn't remember what game was in what. I'm finally starting to reel it in here and have a better understanding.
And at the end of it, if you beat it in under 2 hours, Link takes off his cap and you realize he was a woman the whole time. Wait, no.
Nope.
Super Metroid.
Yep, indeed. No, that's Linkle in Hyrule Warriors.
Oh, boy. Jeez. We better end this. But do you think there's anything to take away from all this?
No, I think that there are 3 pillars. At the end of the day, I think there's 3 games in the Zelda series that will become pillars in gaming. And even though, or at least in the Zelda franchise, and it's going to be the original Legend of Zelda, Ocarina, and Breath of the Wild. I think that those are tent poles in creative direction, of change of direction, of complete reworking, even though the first one was kind of a reworking of existing games at the time, a different way to have a game. Ocarina was a figuring out how to have a game in 3D. Breath of the Wild, yes, it's cueing off of a lot of existing open world games that are out there already, but I do feel like for the most part it did it in a very, very good way. Breath of the Wild I might be speaking more as its relationship inside the Zelda universe, but Ocarina and the original The Legend of Zelda changed how video games were made.
Yes, I agree.
Cool, man.
But one thing I'll say about the Breath of the Wild changing games more broadly is that I think what it does a really good job of is taking games that have very complex open worlds and inventory systems and making them accessible to casual gamers.
Okay, I like this. Yeah,
I cannot go back. I made it like 2/3 of the way through Witcher 3. I would never go back to it at this point and be able to pick it up again.
I see.
Because it is too complex. The story is too deep. And Zelda makes that type of game, which I find very enjoyable, accessible to the casual gamer.
I love that you said that because it's interesting. When the original The Legend of Zelda was being made, one of the jokes was they took all the numbers out. This Final Fantasy was happening at that time. And the idea was, well, okay, you get a sword and it doubles your attack or whatever. You get a tunic and it doubles your defense.
Yeah.
But they took all the numbers out and it just became an action adventure game.
They made it less of a card game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And a couple of those numbers went back in for the Adventures of Link. You do have to grind a little bit. But for the most part, you could say there are numbers in Breath of the Wild, but compared to things like The Witcher, they took all the numbers out.
Yeah, no, there are no numbers. There's the inventory's about to break.
Inventory's about to break. Technically, there's little numbers on like your suits, right? But still, you don't. It's just a way.
It's watered down.
That could be anything. That could be gems. That could be like, you have 5 gems on your whatever.
Yeah. There's no like. There aren't a bunch of sockets on your sword that you can put different gems into to make them whatever.
Yeah, so the accessibility is something that Zelda nailed with those 3 games. And actually, I know we're trying to get out of here, but a game like Twilight Princess, which I actually had down as my favorite Zelda game ever. I think you like Twilight Princess a lot too.
For sure.
I think we've spoken about this. We both very much enjoy it.
I'd be shocked if we hadn't.
With that said, Twilight Princess, for me, maybe Skyward Sword was the height of inaccessibility for people. So like Twilight Princess had 4 hours of reading text boxes of how to shoot an arrow while you're going around Ordon Village before you actually get into the adventure. You know what I mean? There's a lot of just reading text boxes, reading text boxes. And Breath of the Wild, for better or for worse, just throws you in. Ocarina of Time, for the most part, throws you in. Legend of Zelda absolutely just throws you in.
Yeah.
And there it is.
You got it.
All right, let's get out of here.
All right.
Alex, if people want to find you on the old interwebs, where can they do that?
They can find me at Works on My Machine. No O in Works. That's on Instagram and Twitter and Reddit.
Cool. I'll take it. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Raptor Paint, and people can find the show, Another Zelda Pod, on Twitter, Another Zelda Podcast on Instagram. We are also on Facebook and iTunes and YouTube and Google Play by simply searching Another Zelda Podcast. You can also go to our actual website, anotherzeldapodcast.com, where we keep show notes of all of our episodes and links to things like our Patreon page and our Discord account and all of that. Please remember to, if you are so inclined, leave us reviews on iTunes. It absolutely helps us in the ranking in iTunes, and people have been very kind, Alex, and they've said very wonderful things about us, and we are completely smitten and grateful for that feedback over on iTunes.
Well, I'm glad that all of my shadow and bot accounts are being put to good use.
Nice. All right, Alex. Well, until next time, people can find you on Discord at Ocarina of Rhyme.
You got it, buddy.
Maybe they can chat with you. Maybe we'll even throw in a channel just to get people started on Discord. We'll throw in a channel about this exact episode. How about that? To keep the conversation
meet
going.
And greet. Something for the fans.
I like it. I like it. All right, Alex, no doubt we'll have you on the show again in season 2. I know we're trying to put together a couple live shows. Perhaps you'll join us for those if you are able.
I'd love to.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Till then, let's head out. I don't know how to do the outro because usually I say, all right, and then Kate says, okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
That'll do.